Everybody to the latest travel industry pubcast. As you know, we're now doing these things virtually, but I have my beer in hand, so cheers. I have my regular pubcaster with me, Mr. Steve Endicott. We're known as the travel industry veterans, and I have another travel industry veteran with us here today. This is the first time we've become a tripartite. There's the three of us today, so hopefully this will work. And we have a very special guest. And that's Mr. David Speakman, the founder of the amazing travel counselors business, which I don't need to introduce to people in the travel industry. We all know about that fantastically successful business. And so we're going to try and make this work between the three of us. And we've got lots of things to talk about. So we're going to get cracking. Now, Steve, I'm going to start with you. We've had some good news this week and last week, and that's positive announcements about a vaccine. What does this mean for the travel industry?
Well, no simple answer to that one. The beginning of the end. So what I mean by that is there's actually light at the end of the tunnel from COVID, where we've been struggling through for 6-9 months with no light at the end of the tunnel. I think most people have expectation that vaccinations will start pre-Christmas. It'll take the winter to get the older generation and the health workers and the medically impaired, medically vulnerable, vaccinated. But the downside of that is it's unlikely to mean that holidaymakers, i.e. people under 50, younger people, will be vaccinated before the summer. So there's probably going to be a late surge in bookings. And I think an ultra-late market. And reversing it back to you guys, I think the biggest issue is the cost of testing at the moment at £125 a test, £250 a couple, or £500 a family. Would you book at the moment with that sort of cost of testing in place? Roxy?
Yes, Steve, that's a separate issue. If we can come to the cost of testing in a moment, because I think it is a very interesting issue. But let's just focus on the vaccine for the time being. David, what are your thoughts on this? Because I remember an earlier a webcast with you with Lucy Huxley, and you were saying that you wouldn't be someone that would be happy to take a vaccine.
I mean, I'm in that age group, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. And I have had 3 flu jabs in consecutive years, and also a pneumonia jab. And it's my age group because I'm I am much older than you two young lads. But you know, I think there's a principle here. You know, like when the WHO decided it was a pandemic and it was a phase 6 pandemic, then any liability that the vaccine people, the pharmaceutical people, when they're producing a vaccine, there's no liability on them all to that its efficacy is okay, or that it doesn't kill people. And I think there's an issue here, right? And the industry's just shot into, right, and I think the population shot into it's vaccine or it's nothing, and you can't travel. And I think that's a massive legal issue, freedom issue. And it just seems as though Steve's saying, well, you know, like, thank God we've got this at the end of the tunnel, this vaccine. And I think we should kick back against it. If I'm a travel person, I get it that it seems light at the end of the tunnel, but there is a moral issue here that people shouldn't be forced to have it and even coerced to have it. And forced is one thing, but coerced means like, well, you can't get on that flight if you don't have a vaccine. And remember, once you've done that vaccine, then there'll be another one next year. And then should we all have a flu vaccine? And should we have a digital health passport? And you're going into realms that a lot of people kick off and say, well, I don't want it. I don't need it. And not only that, I have freedom to choose. Are you going to cut all these people out of traveling in the future? And I do think it's an issue for the industry. And I think the industry should have backed off a bit and not gone along this path saying, hey, it's a panacea. It's good. That's it. That's the solution. That's where I'm coming from. Of course,
okay, David, I don't agree.
I will take it if it's good for me. But I want to know, I'd like all the cabinet first to take it first. I want all the young ones to take it first, and then I can see that it's all right. Yeah? Enough people have to test it first before me. I'm not a bloody guinea pig. No way. Sorry, Steve, did you say something?
I agree with your principle, but I don't agree travel's doing the wrong thing, because you'll be allowed to travel if you've either had the vaccine and got a health passport, or if you don't want to have the vaccine, you simply take the test before you go on holiday and test when you go back, so you don't have to quarantine.
Well, this is
so nobody's forcing people into it.
Why should I take the test that actually, in most times, will make sure that I am a false positive? Why should I be restricted? Listen, if there's a proper test, and you'll see the test in Liverpool where they do mass testing and they've found that there's very, very few people infected, right? But the PCR test gives you, even though you can't infect anyone, will give you a false positive usually because the cycle threads are too high. And therefore, it's just, we are just pushing the industry and all ourselves into saying, listen, let's step up and say, listen, first of all, let's make sure the vaccine's right. Let's make sure the testing's right. Let's make sure that all that's right. And we've been pushed by the government into this kind of cul-de-sac. We're forced to either have the digital health passport or take the test. How many people want to do that? Security, take your shoes off now. You need a test. It'll take half an hour. In fact, it might take 2 days. Can we not tackle this by having, why have, and I'll say after, but why have the industry not employed the likes of top virologists themselves? Instead, they're listening to government to lead them through it, and the likes of Matt Hancock. And if you, I'm sure you agree with me, you would not employ Matt Hancock to do anything. All right, maybe to wash up, but that's probably the maximum. You wouldn't.
David, I'm going to jump in.
Jump in.
Right? I don't agree with you, because if you actually look at the UK travel industry at the moment, if we don't have a solution that allows people to travel this coming summer, the vast majority is going bust. So if you give me a choice of having no company, no job, or admitting and giving in to government pressure to take a vaccine or government pressure to do testing to travel, I take it.
You're spot on there. So let's get like something that could kill us and stick it in our arm, because that's okay. Oh, and then we can all travel. Oh, no, you're right. You're right, Steve. Sorry, I never thought of that. What a solution, mate. I'll tell you what, you take it before me and then I feel a lot better.
David, I volunteer to take it before you me, because I don't see another alternative for the industry. And I think we're going to have some compromises, because other countries are not going to let our dirty, infected nation come into theirs unless we've had the vaccine or we've had tests to say we're not bringing it back.
They're as daft as we are. Listen, do you not remember?
Yeah, but David, the world can't be right. We have to fit in with the world.
In 2009, right, Der Spiegel reported on swine flu, and there was a vaccine, and Angela Merkel was still there, and she took the vaccine, right? But it just so happened that they didn't tell everybody that she took a different vaccine than the plebs. Come on, man. You have to be serious. Like, get on the plane and, you'll be able to have business class, because I travel business class now. Be able to have business class, enjoy yourself, glass of champagne. It might be your last one because you might die. But it's okay because you've taken the vaccine. Come on, man.
Well, guys,
I don't think we'll get past this, because I think this is a moral issue.
Okay.
And I take your point. Listen, mate, I take your point. If you say, listen, we're talking about transaction, what's the best way we can make sure we fill our planes? Well, I get you, but I'm not into that, right? I get you, but I think there's a higher reason why you do or you don't. And
David, I completely support your questioning of it. I completely support your question of the government. I, for once, am going to be compliant, because I actually want to get the business working again in traveling, so we all don't go bust.
You're always compliant.
Oh, rubbish.
People want to be compliant.
Absolute rubbish. Moving on, Brooksy.
My question was,
right,
and I don't think you all listened, is not necessarily your personal opinion on the vaccine, but what the impact is going to be for our industry.
So can I have a go at that, David?
No, I answered that.
Okay, let me have my version of it then. Well, share prices went up by 40% of these lovely airlines, because the city thinks it's crucial to building back confidence. So consumers, on the other hand, have not rushed out to book at the moment, because the price of testing is too high, and also we're supposedly in the lockdown. So when lockdown ends, and no idea when that's going to be, because it's not going to be December, earliest probably is going to be February, then I think there is a lot of pent-up demand that will come out before we hit recession, because we can't forget we've also got Brexit to deal with, we've also got recession coming, So the longer term, it's not going to be a great couple of years. But I think there will be a short-term bounce back because basically there is pent-up demand. I want to get out of this country. I want to go to nice hot places like lovely David sitting in Spain at the moment.
I'm not.
Because it's cold and miserable much now, David.
I don't live in Spain. I live in Monaco.
Oh, sorry, darling.
Don't mess with me.
You used to live in Spain and you've moved for tax reasons. You tax exile.
If it's good enough for Lewis Hamilton, it's good enough for me.
I like that.
Listen,
Can we?
No. I need to come back on that. Listen, I get you regarding the testing. All that I'm saying, and this is, and you know, I still have a reservation because I think we should have gone saying, listen, we don't want even testing. Just let's have no quarantine and everybody's all right because the virus is gone. That's a different issue. But if you are having testing, and I wrote this the other day, I tweeted this the other day. The thing is, I cannot see the government, right, when it throws tests about like confetti, free tests about like confetti. And then as soon as you say, can the industry have testing, they say, 120 quid or whatever. Yeah. And you're testing everybody that moves. You know, they're free. And then suddenly it's, and I am a cynic enough to think the airlines, or particularly the airports, would like to charge people, right? Because, well, you know, we may as well make some income, you know, right? And I think if you're going to have testing, I don't like it, but if you're going to have testing, it should be free. And the government should provide it because that's part of commerce. That's part of saving the airlines, is it not?
They're not going to do it. So the only option that we have, because they clearly indicated they're not going to do it. So the only option we have is asking for access to government stocks because they've got the biggest stocks and the biggest capability given testing. And I think a consumer would pay £25 a person to have an outbound test and an inbound test if it's allowed to go on holiday. Anything above that is a massive blocker to selling holidays.
And we're miles from that £25 at the moment, Steve.
Cheapest 125 quid, yeah.
I went to Gail and I went to Cyprus last month on holiday, and we had to have a test to prove, a negative test when we arrived. It cost us £200 each. And I was actually panicking that we wouldn't get the results back in time and we might not be allowed on the flight. So I was thinking of getting a second one done. And then I thought about it. And I thought that'd be £800 just for the testing. That's more than I'm paying for the holiday.
I don't think there's a certain resistance. You see, I've been through a few of these recessions, not like this, obviously it's more than a recession, but I do think that what suffers first are the cheaper holidays, right? The low cost carrier, always the first, right? Because they're really price sensitive. So if you sort of say, well, we're going back to the normal OTA, we got beach holiday, cheap and cheerful, cheap as chips, but volume. I don't think you're in there. You don't if you charge for a test, people won't do it. They'd love to do it, but they can't actually afford it. That's their beer money. So
David, I'm trying to get them from 125 quid to 25 quid, and ideally I'd like to get it to free. But you got to start somewhere. Yeah, in the art of the possible.
I know you say tell me why it's not free, right? You say it can't be free because you said the government.
I didn't say it can't be. I said the government won't do it.
But the government said you could fly to Tenerife, and then 3 weeks later they said you can't fly to Tenerife. So I wouldn't trust the government in telling me anything. They can't make them out.
Fair comment.
But guys, you're all entrepreneurs. Why have we not seen a travel company yet come up with a package which includes the price of a test? So your holiday includes the price of a COVID test.
But see, I'm not a holiday.
The base cost is too much. The pharmaceuticals are going to make fortunes out of this. Come on. It's like follow the money.
I can't talk about tour operators, etc. sort of things, but one of my businesses will be launching a package rolled up of a product plus testing in the next few weeks.
Plus testing, and again, because he's an entrepreneur, plus testing, and if you give your money and it's cancelled, then you get vouchers, but you don't get your cash back. Is that right?
No. Because let's move on to that.
Vouchers and testing you're good at. Vouchers and testing.
How about this? If you test positive and you can't go on the holiday, you get the money back just for the test.
Basically, that's part of the policy. Thank you, Brooksy. Right, moving on. Lovely Ryanair. How many agents do you think they send bust, Brooksy?
Well, it could be some quite big ones, actually, because I mean the exposure of some of the OTAs is particularly high to Ryanair. And the one thing you can be sure about, and there's not a lot of things in this world at the moment you can be sure about, but you can be sure that you won't get a refund from Ryanair.
Because basically they booked as an agent. So what the big issue is, obviously Ryanair refunding their customers direct, because the customers direct can do a recharge against Ryanair. But when they book via an agent, the customers can do a recharge against the agent, and the agent's got to recover the money from Ryanair, and they're refusing to pay that money back. We've disputed any chargebacks you make on virtual cards, and they're demanding that the customer fills out a form to say, yes, they did book, and all these other criteria. You send that form in, and when they get that form, they come back to you and say, you booked on behalf of an agent or customer via a website which is against our rules, we're not refunding you. And this is millions and millions and millions of pounds.
But I mean, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm actually going to defend Ryanair here, which it feels wrong to me. But in fairness to them, they...
Hang on, what's in your drink? What's in your drink? What's in your drink? What are you drinking there?
They've never wanted to be involved in dynamic packaging. They've never wanted to embrace the travel industry and work with agents or OTAs. So I kind of,
Brooksy, you honestly telling me they don't know that millions and millions of their seats are booked via travel agents? Absolute bullshit.
Of course they know.
Of course they know. But the thing is, you run the risk of them shafting you, and that's the top and tail of it. And what any self-respecting travel agent, if you're not wanted, then don't do it.
Don't book them.
So David,
you dance with the devil, and that's what they've done.
Yeah. So policies have changed since you left travel counsellors, because travel counsellors sell Ryanair flights as part of their packages. So you saying that you would have stopped that?
Absolutely. They wouldn't have done it.
Okay, and I probably actually believe you on this one, mate. I do believe you.
Oh, you mean you don't believe me on some other things?
Not always, no.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
So, David,
all right. There's nothing like a bit of trust throwing in there.
So, David, you're an exponent of the trust funds, right? I'm going to tell you they're an absolute waste of time, because consumer money is going to the trust. Yeah. And if you release them for a low-cost carrier, which all trust funds do to dynamically package, and including travel counsellors and all the others, the moment you have to deal with refunds and they don't refund you on a timely basis, the trust fund doesn't work, because you haven't got the money in the trust fund to repay the customer. So therefore, agent trust funds without airlines being in trust funds is a complete waste of time. And you spent half your life exposing something that doesn't work.
We've jumped from they're okay, but then when Ryanair mess you about, then everything's total waste of time. There is a middle ground, Steve. You know what I mean? There's a middle ground. You know it. So if you want to be controversial when we're not on the pubcast, right? Right. Let's talk. Right. The way I see it is that they are, but now we have to now sort of what the perfect will be is that there's trust funds actually for the airlines, and the ATOL rules are flawed as far as I'm concerned, because the mom and pop or just normal industry tour operators, decent sized tour operators, not massive ones, right, are vulnerable to airlines just not flying and not refunding or not giving cash refunds. And at the end of the day, this goes back to what I first said when you started giving vouchers out. The industry should have gone to the government and said, listen, these bad airlines are not giving us the money, so can you put pressure on them, because your system of ATOL is flawed, because we can't pay them, because the airlines can't. And what happened, Steve, and remember what happened straight away, instead of that, right, the industry immediately defaulted to take pressure off the airlines, right, from the customer, and give cheap vouchers or bogus vouchers. And everybody give bogus vouchers and said, that's it. Number one, you go on the wrong side of the argument with the customer, you go on the wrong side of the argument with the government, and you took pressure off the airlines. And that was an absolute strategic flaw in that, right? And now what they're doing, right, and you saw it yesterday, aviation, they talk, they global task force, moving into sorting everything out, the global task force. And what were they talking about? Aviation this, aviation that.
Yeah.
And tour agent, tour operator, call it what you will, you are totally isolated because you didn't stand up and be counted and nail the aviators first. And now it's all about aviation. And so the aviation create the problem, and now they'll be saved. And I get
100% agree.
I get that the airlines, and you do want to fly, and you know, we do want an airline industry, but you have to understand the actual scope of how much money, right, they use, customer money they use, right, misuse, if you will, is ridiculous. Unflown revenue, and it's ridiculous. And so as soon as you give, say, $1 billion to somebody, they really need $2 billion. You tell them, oh, you have to put it in a trust fund or an escrow, call it what you will. They'll need fortunes. It'll take years to get sorted. And in the meantime, the fall guys are the atoll holders.
David, for once, we're in 100% agreement, because if you looked at the balance sheets of most of the airlines when COVID hit, they had less cash on their balance sheet and they did have in refundable money to all the customers, which basically means they've been operating from customer money and couldn't actually do the refunds. Fact, no argument. They're in black and white.
But more than that, and just let me. But one thing that is crazy as well, and that's right. You're right, and we all agree on that. But the thing is also, if the American airline, you can nip in and nip out of administration or Chapter 11 anytime you want. Just get rid of your unsecured creditors. Just get
the customer.
Them, which is the customer. Thanks very much. So we've got like Chapter 11 administration, and then we've got a flawed atoll. Is there anything else you can do? Right? It is absolute mess.
Okay, so if you're a travel agent at the moment, do you abandon dynamic packaging? Is it dead forever, or is it dead until things stabilise?
No, I think you'll have to sort of say, listen, until you get a trust fund. Well, I tell you what, another thing, the rule of law. Why can I not take because if the courts had been open, travel counsellors, if I had still owned travel counsellors, I would have taken the airlines to court immediately. And I know quite a few of my ilk who would do the same, right? Of my generation, we'd take them to court straight away. Cut your nose off to spite your face, maybe, but you cannot do what you're doing. How can you have a law, EU 261, right? Law, and if you breach it, it's criminal. And then you say, all right, forget it. Did you hear Thomas Cook's recently? Thomas Cook, these guys who've set up again, the new Thomas Cook, right? Yeah. Right? And they set up, and within 2 weeks, they said something like, I'll tell you what, we might pay out and we might not pay out, depending if there's hang on, you've just bloody signed a contract with Atoll, all the stuff that you do, and you've signed up for Atoll, and that comes under EU 261 or the PTR regulations that you pay within 14 days. What's that? Oh, well, we might do, we might not do. Are we in a parallel universe here where we can choose not to pay under contract or under criminal law, for Christ's sake? Come on. And it's all this, like, what did that guy say from Atoll, from the CAA a few months ago, saying, oh, well, it would take us 2 years to take someone to court properly. I'm telling you what, the due process is not working. And everybody knows if we had due process, we'd take these airlines to court and then they wouldn't be as crazy with customer money because they'd realise they could be taken to court. Yeah, it's only because they know they get away with it and they can nip into Chapter 11 that they are as audacious as they are.
Okay, can't argue any of those comments.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Can I just say, I don't have actually my stomach's bad from beer, so I have this instead. Gaviscon.
What's that? Gaviscon.
Gaviscon is by my bed.
He's a druggie at heart, you can tell.
Steve,
right, last question then, Brooksy, for you, because we've got to wind up with the winners and losers in a second. Last for you, Cruise.
Yeah.
2 months ago, I think you said loser. Do you think that's still the case now that they've got control of testing on board and they can get a safe environment? Do you think Cruise is going to bounce back? You've got a cruise business, or I had one.
I think they're two separate statements. getting testing under control. But I think controlling the virus is a very difficult thing to actually say. That sentence, the word controlling the virus, I just think it's an impossible situation unless you quarantine people for 14 days before they actually walk on the ship. I don't see how you can guarantee that you're going to be in a COVID-free environment. I think it's more a case of, you have to do the best that you can, and you've got to live with the fact that there will be COVID cases on cruises, and it's all part of, we have to learn to live with this virus, like we've learned to live with, novavirus and norovirus and flu and other illnesses that exist. We have to learn to live with it. I don't think you can guarantee a cruise that will never have COVID on it.
You can't, but will we get enough consumer confidence for them to start cruising again? Really what I meant.
It's back to our first point about the vaccine, Steve. And I think, if you've been vaccinated and you know that there's a 95% chance that it's going to protect you, then I think absolutely 100% people are going to start cruising again, because I think, the good thing about cruise is that their target demographic is older, and those people in that demographic will be close to the front of the line in terms of getting inoculated.
Let me say.
So you're making the point that basically it'll bounce quicker because older people will be vaccinated, older people can travel. But David, you're old and you ain't going to get the vaccine, so will you go?
No, but the thing is with the vaccine, you have to understand, once it became into phase 6, WHO phase 6, right, pandemic, right, there's no liability. But also, when they've been doing the vaccines, when they've been preparing the vaccines, creating the vaccines, some of them don't do what you think they'll do. There's only the Oxford one at this moment in time that will stop infection, or they prevent infection. The other ones just dull the symptoms, right? So they're not a cure. They won't cure you, or not a cure. They won't prevent you from catching it. You'll catch it, but you won't feel as bad. But that said, you'll still die if you die, yeah, right? So you don't want them. Pfizer, I understand, is not one of those. And also the Oxford one, I understand, will actually tackle the infection. Now, that said, I don't know whether you know, but Seadream have just done this, haven't they? Right? Yeah. They went across the Atlantic to the Caribbean, and people were there 14 days, whatever, to get there, and everything was good. And then they let a family on in Barbados, right? And this family, I understand, 5 out of 6 had COVID, right? Yeah. And they did loads of tests, let me say. But I think there's issues here about freedom and stuff like that. One of the things that you find with Americans, and maybe, and I live in Monaco, I have a Spain, and so I've traveled since this
pandemic.
Yeah. I find that people in America are very infatuated for wearing masks, and they've been frightened to death and they should wear masks. And I think what you're going to find in cruising is that you're going to find some people want wearing masks and some people not. But the problem is the ones that wear masks will insist on those who don't want to wear masks. And it will become an issue in the industry. It become an issue on the flights. Yeah.
She's already.
Yeah. But like you said, well, listen, I don't want to wear. I have to say now, right? And I'm relatively fit. But when I wear a mask, I find it's harder breathing, for God's sake. It's harder. It's harder breathing.
I hate them. Absolutely hate them.
So I don't want one, but it's other people, Mr. Know-It-All. Listen, if you don't want wear one, if you want wear one, you wear one. But when they start insisting I wear one, and this is what will happen in cruising, I've seen it already in Seadream, when they decided to do it and decided all the staff didn't have to wear it because everybody was tested once a day virtually, right? But what happened is the ones kicked off, like, why we're not wearing masks. Now, I have to say, we're on holiday. Whether you like it or not, you go on holiday to meet people, to chat, to have a drink at the bar, all those things. If you can't socialise as we know it, as we've learned to socialise, then what's the point in going on holiday? You may as well stay at home and look at your wife in a mask. Sorry,
David, I think you raised a very good point.
Sorry. You are.
I think we
don't need to know about the kinky stuff for you and Maureen get onto David. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, I know.
Right, so last point, because we've got to wind up. I think David's making a very good point about rebellion, and I'm making a different one, but related to it. At the moment, I'm complying because I've got older parents and I don't want them to die. And loads of other people in the same circumstances, I've got friends that are vulnerable.
Yeah.
When those parents and those friends have been vaccinated, assuming they take the vaccination, sod the rest of the country, because I'm not going to quarantine when I come back from the Canaries when it's got a lower rate than it is in Rochdale. Because what's the logic? It's illogical. I'm not going to obey. I'm going to rebel. I'm going to say, no, it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do it, government. Because the people I've been complying with, and the reason I've been complying with social pressure has disappeared, because the people I'm worried about dying are not going to die because they've been vaccinated. So you know what? The rest of you can get it. I don't care.
But what if they die because of the vaccination?
Sorry?
What if they die because of the vaccination?
David, everybody's going to have to make the choice on that one. You're very clear about your position, but loads of other people clear that they will take the vaccination and leave it.
I'll have it once it's proved that it's okay. But I have to say to you, like, just, I see and you're 50 odd, I suppose, 50, something like that, 50 odd. And I'm 70 odd. And you turn around and you say, just think, if you were in my position at 70, I don't want somebody, and no disrespect to you when I say this, but I don't want somebody as young as you telling me what I can do and what I can't do, right? That's what rankles me. I want to be in control of my own life, yeah? And I think, I don't want you to be in control of it for my good. Oh, like, I'll look after you, David. No, I insist. No, we'll just stick this bloody needle in because I want you to be all right. No, I'll stick the bloody needle in myself. I'll decide myself, right? So remember, we all get old, and you've got another 20 years or whatever before you're probably as old as me. And then I turn around and say, well, this is what happens, right? And your kids will be saying, oh, I want to protect them, so stick a needle in them. And it's for everybody to choose. And
David, it'll be my parents' choice, not me dictating what happens to them. Completely agree with you. All I'm trying to give you is a more mass market view, a more mass market view of, we've got a little bit of comply to do with the government to get where we want to go. And if we don't comply, we won't get where we want, and we'll be bust, because they don't actually care about travel.
No, they don't. And well, I've said this, and it's really controversial, this, right? But I love travel, and I love travel agents, and I think they're salt of the earth, and they're fantastic at what they do. Tour operators, specialist tour operators particularly, I love them. So I'm not denigrating them at all. But if you're an outsider looking in, yeah, and you've said to pubs and clubs and restaurants, listen, I'll tell you what, close, but there's takeaway, isn't there? Right? So they can say to the travel industry, right, well, you can still fly on these aircraft, but you book direct, kind of, if you know what I mean, yeah? And this is where they come in. So they don't value what we believe is the core of the industry, which is how we sell and how we give advice. They won't value that at all. And therefore, we are the last in line, yeah? And I do think, and I don't want to be negative, I do think the industry will be decimated. And I do think there will be a lot of people come into the industry when those have been decimated, right? And they'll fix a lot of these things, such as trust, which will be better trust than they were before. Stuff like that, yeah? Because we'll all learn a lesson, yeah? But I think there will be a lot of people, a lot of tour operators desperate. I mean, you just look at the figures. I don't know whether you've done the figures. There's a correlation between turnover and how much costs you've got in a business, yeah?
And therefore, how much debt, the bigger you are, the harder you hit.
Yeah, but there's an actual correlation. So say for every 20 million you turn over in a year, you've probably burned £100,000 in cash burn, if you will, to survive. And therefore, there's a lot of companies, because we're now talking, next March, there's like I remember I was in Aspen this year and I was saying to people, oh, well, it'll all be over by May. It'll be over. May's all right. May's all right. Look at how much I know. Why have you got me on this podcast? I don't know anything. I thought it'll be over by May. Well, they won't. No, and then we'll just sneak in with lates. We'll just sneak in with lates and then we'll have a late season. That'll be good. Christmas band, we're sorted. And what are we doing? We're talking about next March. We're talking about missing Easter. We're even talking about might be lates for next summer. And companies can't last that long. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. And the government needs to do something, right? And to be honest, I don't think they will. So what we need to do is put pressure on them to get rid of these quarantines and to start flying, because the virus is not as bad as you think, right? And
I agree, but David,
yeah,
we've
but
all got to work together to do that.
We're not fighting it. We're not fighting it with virologists that we've taken. How many virologists work for ABTA? Right? You've got none. Right? No. If that is the issue that creates all these problems for its members, yeah. Why have they not got one? Why have they not got 5? Why have they not got 10? How many solicitors have you got? Oh yeah, well, there's legal issues. Well, how many virologists have you got? Yeah? How many experts have you got to prove that the government is wrong, or do something right? You've not done it. That's where you should be with it. Instead of talking about this,
we're going to sum up by saying, yes, we agree, but we have to sum up. So we're in the last 2 minutes. Brooksy, any last comments you picked up from today?
Oh, I think, it's there's probably nothing new that we've learned, but, we've got to resolve these issues and they've got to get resolved quickly.
David, last comment?
Listen, there'll always be people wanting to travel, and I'm positive, but I have to say, I just think the industry has to get together, and I know they think I split it, and I don't. I think everybody has to be positive in sort of making the government accountable to what they push down our throats. And I'm not talking about vaccine, but what actions they push down our throats. How can you say 1 week you can fly to Tenerife and then a week or 2 weeks later you can't fly to Tenerife? That has been a disgrace. No compensation for it. They just changed their mind. And I have to say, I just think that we have lost our moral compass, or the government's lost the moral compass.
Okay, my last view is it's time to rebel, but we've got to rebel in a focused manner that actually gets us what we want. And what we want is no quarantine, destinations open this winter. And if we have to make compromises, we have to make compromises. And apart from that, me and Dave are on the same page. Anyway, thank you for your time.
No compromising.
Thank you for your time, guys. And at that point, say all well.